Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight, we're driven deep into the darkest corners of the Lone Star State, where the highways stretch long. The gas stations blink out after midnight, and truckers whisper about the things they've seen when no one else is around. From phantom hitchhikers to rigs that drive themselves, these are 20 disturbing true Texas trucker horror stories that'll make you think twice before pulling off on an empty stretch of road. But listen close. Most folks make one big mistake. They leave without subscribing. And by doing that, they miss out on the most bone-chilling, late-night tales that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because once the wheels start rolling and the night settles in, it's already too late to turn back. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there? 'Cause out here on Creepy Vibes, the road never ends. And neither does the horror. Now climb in, settle down, and let's ride into the dark heart of Texas. Raymond Red McAllister didn't scare easy. 30 years on the road taught him that the real monsters were human. The guy in the Crown Vic that tried to jack his rig outside of Lubbock. The lot lizard with a butcher knife in her purse. At the Barstow pilot, the methead who ran into traffic and exploded like a sack of meat on I-45. Yeah, Red had seen monsters. He'd also put a few of them 6 feet under, but what he saw at mile marker 289 wasn't a monster. It was something worse. It was waiting. The first night it happened, Red was hauling a half-empty reefer unit running light from OKC to Albuquerque. Dead road, dead night, cold wind pressing flat across the plains. He had Take It Easy humming low on the radio and the thermos full of black coffee that tasted like brake fluid but did the job. He was half lost in his own head, thinking about nothing and everything ex-wives. Old friends, that kid in Amarillo who might be his son, when he saw the figure on the side of the road. A woman, standing still as death by the shoulder, just before the green marker flashed by mile 289. He didn't get a good look, didn't slow down. It was 1 in the damn morning and no one sane should have been out there. Just a flicker of white fabric and what looked like bare feet, long black hair. Stillness, like she was carved out of concrete. He drove past. Didn't stop, didn't look back. But he remembered. The second night, he saw her again. Same spot. Same woman. Same windless dress. This time, she was facing him. He couldn't see her features, but he felt her eyes. His headlights didn't catch any color in her skin. It was like light refused to touch her. He didn't sleep that night. Pulled off in Tucumcari, poured cheap whiskey into a motel ice bucket, and sat with his Glock in his lap. He should have turned back then. He should have gone east, found a new route. But truckers don't scare. Truckers don't change routes. Red told himself it was all in his head. Night 3. She was in the middle of the highway, not on the shoulder, not waving like she wanted help, just standing dead center in the lane, arms down, palms facing forward. He slammed the brakes so hard his left knee cracked against the dash. The rig fishtailed for a half second, the trailer swung wide, and he felt the whole 18-wheeler teeter. Like it wanted to roll, but it didn't. When he came to a stop, heart pounding like a war drum, the road was empty. She was gone. But her smells in single quotes T. Roses, cheap perfume. The kind you find at a dollar store. Mixed with something worse, something wet, mold and iron, a scent like a woman buried in damp soil. Red stepped out, walked the length of the trailer with a flashlight. Nothing except for a single wet footprint in the gravel beside the cab door, barefoot, small, pressed into the earth like it belonged there. He climbed back in, locked the doors, and didn't stop until Gallup. After that, it got worse. He began to see her reflection in the side mirror just for a flash. Sometimes standing in the sleeper's bunk window. sometimes just behind him in the glass. She never blinked, and she never looked afraid. Once, he found hair long, black, oily twisted around the gear shift. Another time, his dash cam played back footage of her standing on the highway at dawn, her head slowly turning as his truck approached. He didn't remember seeing her that morning, but the camera did. Dispatch noticed the change. He missed pickups, drove past exits, got short with customers. When they called him in for a checkup, he cursed them out and slammed the phone down. He had to keep moving. If he stopped, he was afraid she'd catch up. Then came the final night. He was passing through Amarillo again, trying to avoid mile marker 289, but traffic diverted him back. Some wreck up ahead. It was like fate was pulling him straight to her, and he knew she'd be there. As the mile markers ticked down 292, 291, 290, he held his breath. And then, she wasn't beside the road. She wasn't in the road. She was already inside. He didn't hear her open the door. Didn't feel the weight shift. She was just there, sitting in the passenger seat, hands folded in her lap, eyes on the windshield. Her face was blank to blank, like someone had skinned it and stretched it over a skull that didn't belong to anything human. And her mouth, God, that mouth was starting to smile. She whispered. Something. Red didn't hear it. He was too busy screaming. The rig jackknifed. At 84 miles per hour, they found it the next morning, torn across the embankment near mile marker 289. The trailer had split like a melon, cargo scattered across the grass. No sign of Red Dot except for the seat. The passenger seat had been soaked with something pink, thin, smelled like flowers. And old meat. They searched for days. No body. No blood trail. Just a note scratched into the glass of the inside of the windshield, written backward from the passenger's side. You finally stopped. Now drivers who pass mile marker 289 don't stop. They don't blink. Some refuse to take that route at all. Because if you see her once, she'll remember you. If you see her twice, you'll smell her perfume. And if she climbs inside your cab, you don't get out. Not ever. Jorge Morales had driven just about everything in his 22 years on the road. Chickens, pigs, cattle, even high-end race horses once for a Saudi prince's cousin. But livestock was his bread and butter. It wasn't glamorous, and it sure as hell wasn't clean, but it paid decent and kept him out of the house and away from the stale smell of his ex-wife's perfume lingering in his old recliner. That morning, the air outside Laredo was already too damn hot for 6 a.m., the kind of heat that settled on your skin like wet wool and never let go. His old Kenworth was idling like a tired dog when the call came through. A job. Rush haul. No questions. Good money. The voice on the other end belonged to Don Victor Delgado, an old rancher who kept mostly to himself and didn't show up at the local barbecues. Folks around Catula said he practiced Santeria, kept candles burning to saints no one prayed to anymore, and buried more animals than he sold. Jorge had picked up from him once before 6 emaciated bulls that looked like they'd been starved on purpose. But Jorge never asked questions. His job was to haul, not to confess. When he arrived at Delgado's ranch, if you could call that patch of dead dirt a ranch, the first thing Jorge noticed was the silence. No dogs barking, no cattle lowing, no flies buzzing. Just the creak of the windmill turning slow, like even the wind was trying not to disturb whatever lived there. The trailer was already loaded when he backed in. No ranch hands in sight. Delgado himself stood by the open gate, his wide-brimmed hat pulled low, face half in shadow. His eyes, what little Jorge could see, looked bloodshot and heavy with something beyond sleep. "They're ready," he said, voice gravelly. "Don't stop. Don't check on him. Don't even speak to him?" Jorge blinked. "Speak to them?" He asked. Delgado didn't answer. Just handed him a folded envelope. Thick. Cash. Jorge took it and walked back to latch. The trailer shut. That's when he caught the first smell, sharp and metallic, like iron left in the rain with something rotten underneath. He chalked it up to unwashed livestock. Happens. But as he pulled onto the highway, heading north toward San Antonio, a weight settled in his chest. Not nerves, he was long past those, but dread. Thick and oily. It pressed behind his ribs like something alive. 30 minutes into the drive, the first noise came. Tap, tap. Tap. It wasn't the stomp of hooves. It wasn't the shift of weight or the groan of a tired cow. It was deliberate, rhythmic. Tap, pause, tap, tap, like someone or something inside was knocking. He checked his side mirror. Nothing out of place. The back doors were chained and sealed tight. He turned the radio up, classic Tejano blasting through old speakers, and tried to push it out of his head. Then the smell changed. It got sharper. Like wet fur burned at the edges. The cab filled with it. Jorge rolled the window down, stuck his head out, gasped for clean air, but it clung to him. Coated his tongue. He gagged and turned off onto a dirt service road to check the trailer. As soon as his boots hit the gravel, silence. The kind that hums in your ears like something pressing on your eardrums. The air around the trailer shimmered. Heat waves, maybe, but they twisted. Like the air itself didn't want to stay still. He walked around the back, each step slower than the last, like his legs were forgetting how to move. He reached for the latch, then stopped. A sound came from inside, not a moo, not even a grunt. It was breathing, heavy, wet, too loud for cattle, too ... deliberate. Something bumped the inside wall. Then again, harder, then silence. He backed away and didn't open the doors. Drove back to the highway and didn't look in his mirrors again. By the time he hit the outskirts of Laredo, the sound had moved to the cab. A thud behind the driver's seat. He turned. No one there. Then a chill ran down his spine. The passenger door was cracked open. Just an inch. Enough to see something in the reflection of the window, something sitting in the seat. Something gray, long, lean, eyes like polished onyx. He slammed the brakes, heart in his throat, and turned fully, but the seat was empty, except for one thing, a hoof print, black, wet, pressed into the leather seat, and another on the floor mat. Then on the dash, not cow hooves. These were too narrow, too pointed. Like deer, or something that used to be a deer but learned how to stand. Jorge drove the rest of the way in silence, white-knuckled. He didn't stop, not for food, not for gas, not even to call ahead. He just drove. When he reached the drop point and empty field off FM 1472, there was no one there. Just a single tree and a rusted cattle gate. He waited an hour, then another, then opened the trailer. It was empty. No hay. No droppings. No scratches. Except one thing. On the far end of the trailer, etched into the aluminum wall like it had been carved with a claw. Nitrogen monoxide irriganado. It wasn't livestock. Jorge left the truck right there. Didn't even take his logbook. He hitchhiked to a motel off I-35 and burned his boots in a dumpster out back. The company called, then called again. His dispatcher finally left a voicemail. "Hey man, we found your truck. Cops are spooked. Tow guy refuses to haul it." Said something breathed on his neck when he climbed into the cab. Trailer sealed shut now. Chains melted. Not rusted, melted. They never found Delgado again. His ranch was abandoned. House burned down 3 days later. The locals said they saw hoof prints in the ash. Every so often, truckers passing through Laredo say they see a trailer parked under that same tree on 1472. Engine running, empty. Except for the sound of breathing, slow, heavy, hungry Dot, and sometimes, when they pass it at night, they see hoof prints walking out of the cab and into the dark. But never in pairs, only one at a time, like whatever's in there. Walks alone now. Out there in the cracked and unforgiving skin of West Texas, there's a stretch of Highway 90 that truckers whisper about when the diner's quiet and the coffee's gone cold. No one writes it down. No one files official reports. But they know. The ones who've seen it, the ones who got away, they don't forget the Peterbilt with one red eye. The thing about Van Horn is, it's too quiet for a town that close to the border. The wind never seems to stop, and the ground's always thirsty, like it's waiting to drink something that ain't water. It was along that stretch, just east of the Davis Mountains, that Bobby Mendez disappeared. A seasoned trucker, old school, the kind of guy who could fix a leaking fuel line with chewing gum and electrical tape, and who swore by the smell of the road. He said he could smell when a storm was coming. Said the desert warned you, if you listen close enough. His last known load was a flatbed carrying spools of copper wire. Left El Paso around midnight. Never made it to Midland, but before Bobby vanished, he told his younger brother, Ray, about something that had been dogging him at night, just a whisper at first, told over a shared smoke behind the truck stop. In Marfa, said there was a truck riding his ass every time he took that route. One headlight, red as a dying coal. It never passed. Never fell back. Just stayed there. Close enough to fill your mirrors, but not close enough to read a plate. When he slowed, it slowed. When he pulled over, it vanished. Bobby said the engine didn't sound right, not like diesel. He said it growled deep low, like a big dog with something in its throat. He said it made his fillings itch. The first time, he thought it was stress. The second time, he didn't sleep for 2 days. The third time, he left his load in a diner parking lot and took a bus home. Said he'd rather lose his job than see that red eye again, but jobs get scarce and fear has a way of fading when rent's due. Bobby took one last load down, 90. That's when he disappeared. They found the truck 4 days later, empty. Engine off. Still cool. Doors locked from the inside. Load untouched. But something had shredded the inside of the cab, ripped through the seat like claws or teeth. The CB mic was melted. Not burned melted like it had been in a furnace. The windshield was cracked from the inside, long spiderweb fractures leading from a single greasy print. A handprint, but it wasn't human. Too long, too many joints. Ray wanted answers, so he drove the route, not once, not twice, but over a dozen times, always at night, always alone, trying to bait it. He played Bobby's old tapes, blasted the CB, even left the passenger door open like an invitation. It came on the 11th night. Ray said the radio died first, just cut out mid-song, like someone had pulled the cord. Then the air changed, heavy, oily, like someone spilled hot rubber and spoiled meat. He looked in the mirror, and there it was, one headlight, glowing red, floating in the dark like a low-hanging planet. No grill, no outline, just the red light. He said it didn't drive, it glided. The asphalt didn't crunch. The headlights didn't flicker. It didn't bounce like a real rig would. He floored it. Hit 90, then 100. The red light followed, steady as a heartbeat, never gaining, never falling. Just there. When he hit 120, the road changed. Subtle at first. The lines looked wrong, faded in a way they shouldn't be. Then the stars blinked out, one by one, like someone was closing the curtain on the sky. Ray swore the land itself started to slope downward, though he never touched the wheel. He passed a sign for a town that didn't exist. Welcome to Holland. Bone, pop, 0. That's when he blacked out. He woke up in his rig. parked neat in the same diner lot where Bobby had last eaten. His CB was shattered. His boots were soaked with something black and sticky that wouldn't come off for weeks. And carved into the inside of his windshield, scratched in from the inside, were the words, "You called IT." Ray never drove again. They say he wanders the diners and truck stops between Pecos and Alpine, warning anyone who'll listen not to take the Van Horn route at night. They think he's crazy. But every now and then, a truck goes missing. No trace. No call in. Just silence. Like the rig never existed, and always the same story from the last sighting. Black Peterbilt. One red headlight. No driver. It doesn't pass. It hunts dots, so next time you're driving west out of Van Horn and your mirror catches a dull red glow. Behind you, don't pull over, don't radio, don't look. Because if you see it too clearly, you won't see anything else. Ever again. Odessa's got that kind of night where the sky don't ever seem right, even when it's clear. The stars feel too far, like they're looking down with one squinting eye, judging everyone still moving across the flat blacktop veins of West Texas. Ain't no trees to block the wind, no hills to hold back the silence. Just that long, hollow hum of tires on cracked road and the occasional rattlesnake that don't make it to the other side. Wayne. Toller had been driven rigs for 27 years. He wasn't superstitious, not even a little, but he believed in patterns. If a stretch of road always felt wrong in your gut, it probably was. And that particular patch of I-20 just outside Odessa, it always had that bad hum. He could never tell if it was the road or the air or something older and meaner waiting below the surface. He first heard it on a Wednesday night. The CB kicked on all by itself. No squelch, no lead-up. Just this sound like someone was breathing. Too close to the mic, followed by a high-pitched laugh that didn't sound quite human. Wayne flicked the switch off. Thought maybe the wiring was going to hell. Wouldn't have been the first time. His Peterbilt was an old beast, held together with duct tape, coffee, and a lifetime of regrets. But the sound came back the next night. And the next dot, it always started at the exact same time. 12:45 a.m. Not a second sooner. One night, sick of it, Wayne muttered into the mic, "What in the hell do you want?" Silence. Then, "Been waiting on you, Wayne." Now, that was the first time it used his name. Wayne's hand froze halfway to his coffee. He hadn't broadcast his handle. He hadn't said a word about who he was. He hadn't even keyed up the mic that night. "You got the wrong guy," he said, real slow. "No," the voice said. "You're the one. You're mine." He pulled over that night, right off an exit ramp into a dust-blown rest stop with one dead light flickering and a busted vending machine humming like it was alive. He sat there for 30 minutes, watching the trees, or what passed for trees in that part of Texas, bend in a wind he couldn't feel. He tried to sleep in his bunk. Couldn't. That was the night the voice changed. It started sounding like him. Same tone. Same damn cadence. Like it had listened long enough to copy. It had come on the radio and say things Wayne hadn't said out loud in years. Things he thought he'd buried. "I never meant to hit her. I thought she'd move. I didn't stop. I didn't stop. See, back in '04, there was a girl on FM 1788. Summer night, no lights, no signs. Wayne was heading north, heavy load, sleepy. She came out of nowhere walking, maybe running, maybe just standing in the road like she wanted it. He never stopped, told himself it was a deer. Told dispatch he saw nothing, but he remembered the thud. The way his headlights caught something soft and pale. The way the rear view stayed dark even when his heart said turn around. He buried that moment, put it 6 feet under and paved over it with logbooks and years. But the voice didn't forget. Night after night, it spoke with his voice. It started asking him questions. "Where you headed, Wayne? Still running, huh? You ever look under the rig, see what's stuck?" "There?" He started drinking again, not a lot. Just enough to dull the edge of 12:45. But one night, the voice didn't come through the radio. It came from the back of the cab. He heard it, clear as day, crooning an old Merle Haggard tune his ex-wife used to hate. He pulled the rig over so hard he popped a tire. Checked the sleeper. Nothing. Until he saw the message on the mirror. Someone had breathed on it, left foggy letters behind. "Breaker, breaker, wanna talk, Wayne?" That's when he took a hammer to the CB unit, ripped it out of the dash. Smashed it to hell and threw the whole mess into a ravine outside PECOS. And it was quiet for 2 nights. On the third, 12:45 a.m. sharp, his radio, his phone turned on by itself and blared, "Don't need the box, Wayne. I'm in you now." The voice had changed. It was thicker, hungrier, like it'd been swallowing ashen teeth. He started talking back again, whispering on long hauls, not even using a mic, just talking to it, telling it stories, trying to bargain, trying to explain, but it never answered anymore. Just left. Other truckers started passing him at night. Said he looked like he was arguing with someone. Said his lips moved, but no sound came out. One guy claimed he pulled up beside Wayne's cab and saw someone sitting in the passenger seat. A woman, face blurry. No jaw. Wayne disappeared on a Tuesday. Rig was found idling on a dirt road off State Route 302. Cab doors locked from the inside. No sign of a struggle. But the CB was back, shiny, new, still tuned to frequency 666. If you're hauling past Odessa on a moonless night, you might catch a whisper coming through your speakers. Might hear Wayne saying, "Where are you headed, friend?" And if you answer, God help you, because the next voice ain't yours anymore. Levi Cole didn't cry much, not even at funerals. Not when his daddy passed, not when his ex took the kids to Colorado, not when he got the call about his little brother being found face down in a creek near Denton, boots still on and pockets turned out. He was the kind of man who let the road take things from him, miles, memories, pieces of his soul, and never asked for them back. He'd been running a northbound route on I-35 that fall, pulling dry goods from Laredo up to Oklahoma City. Same run he'd done 20 times before. Just another stretch of Texas highway full of broken promises and towns with one gas station and no reason to stop. Levi liked that. He liked the loneliness of it. Until she showed up. It was after Temple, just past midnight. The sky was a sheet of ink. The air was wet with that sticky kind of heat that makes your shirt cling like regret. Levi was humming low to Merle Haggard and sipping the dregs of a lukewarm Coke when he glanced in his mirror and caught a flicker of white. At first, he figured it was a mile marker or maybe a reflector post. But it moved, more like floated. He leaned forward, wiped the mirror with the sleeve of his flannel, looked again. A woman, just standing there on the shoulder, pale and hunched like she'd been crying for days. Her hair was matted to her cheeks. Her dress, white or maybe gray, it was hard to tell, clung to her body like it was soaked through. And her mouth was open like she was mid-sob, but no sound came out. He blinked. She was gone. He muttered a curse and pressed the pedal harder, feeling the rig surge forward like it wanted to run from something too. 10 minutes later, he looked again. She was there, only this time, she wasn't on the side of the road. She was behind his trailer, standing in the middle of the highway. Headlights from the cab barely caught her shape, but she was there. Same wet hair, same open mouth, same stare that didn't seem to end. And this time, she was closer. Levi flipped on his high beams. Nothing but empty blacktop. He turned off the radio, lit a cigarette, Told himself it was nerves, maybe too many hours without rest. But he didn't stop. Didn't even blink. The next time he saw her, she was closer still, standing in the left lane. Now, just outside the draft of the trailer. Like she was pacing him, keeping step. Her mouth wasn't open anymore. It was smiling. Wide. Too wide. He gripped the wheel until his knuckles went white. Glanced at the GPS to see how far to Waco. 40 miles. He could make it. Just needed to keep moving. Stay focused. But the rig started to hum. Low at first. Then louder. Like the engine had picked up a second voice. He checked the mirrors. Again. She was at the rear door of the trailer. Then she was beside the trailer. Then he saw her in the rear view mirror inside the cab. Levi slammed the brakes. Truck screamed. The world spun. He came to a stop on the side of the highway, steam pouring from the hood. The smell of burnt rubber filled the air. He reached for the dome light, clicked it on. She was gone. No woman. No figure. No sound but the ticking of the engine and the frantic drumbeat of his own heart. He exhaled. Told himself it was stress. Maybe a hallucination. Maybe all those damn stories the older drivers tell at 3 a.m. over greasy eggs and black coffee finally got into his head. He started the engine, put it in gear. The CB crackled to life. Why'd you stop, Levi? It was a woman's voice. Not angry. Not sad. Pleased. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. He stared at the radio. Reached for the mic with trembling fingers. Who is this? No answer. Just a slow, breathy laugh that made the hair on the back of his neck rise. Then silence. He drove. Didn't look back. Didn't look at the mirrors. Not for the next 20 miles. Not when his GPS glitched out. Not when he thought he saw a shape on the shoulder keeping pace with the truck. No matter how fast he went, he only looked again when he saw the lights of Waco on the horizon. Just one glance, quick and cautious. Into the rearview mirror. Her face was pressed against the glass. Not behind the truck. Inside the cab. Her eyes were black. Not empty, moving, like things were swimming inside them. Her skin was cracked like dried porcelain. And her mouth wasn't just smiling anymore. It was open and whispering his name. The truck veered. They found it, flipped onto its side outside a truck stop on the outskirts of town. The windshield had spiderwebbed from the inside. Levi wasn't in the cab. They found one fingerprint on the mirror. Small. Wet. Not his. And every now and then, truckers headed north on I-35 say they see a woman in their mirror. Pale. Crying. Then smiling. They say she only gets closer when you look. And once you see her in the rear view. She single quotes as already in the cab. He'd grown up in a house full of arguments, his abuela yelling in Spanish, his uncles slamming doors, his ma crying softly in her room with the old fan clicking every 5 seconds. Even the academy had noise, radio squawking, boots hitting pavement, instructors barking. So when he took his first solo shift in Jim Wells County, cruising the dark 2-lane slit of Highway 281, the quiet crawled into him like a centipede. Slow and segmented and far too comfortable. It was just past 2 a.m., the kind of hour where the earth feels abandoned. No headlights in either direction. Just prickly pear, thorny brush, and the long, slow breath of South Texas land trying to forget the sun. He kept his windows cracked to let the hot wind roll in, even though it smelled like dead grass and oil. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Not steady, but dragging. Slap. Scrape. Slap. Scrape. Caleb slowed the cruiser, squinting through the windshield. His high beams caught the shimmer of something up ahead, something pale and moving. A person. A man. Standing on the faded center line of 281, maybe 100 yards from where the county road dipped toward the dry creek bed near mile marker 13. Son of a, Caleb muttered. He picked up the radio mic, voice steady, just like he was trained. This is Unit 4. Got a possible pedestrian on 281 about 2 miles south of the bypass. Gonna check it out. No answer. He clicked the mic again. Dispatch, you copy? Static dot. He flicked the spotlight on. The beam caught the man square in the chest. No reaction. The guy didn't raise a hand, didn't flinch. He just stood there, swaying gently like a scarecrow on a calm day. Caleb rolled the cruiser to a stop, put it in park, and opened the door. The air outside was hotter than inside, thick as soup. Sir? Caleb called out. No response. He stepped closer, hand resting on the butt of his holstered Glock not drawn yet. Just ready. That's what they told you to do. Be ready, not scared. But something was wrong. The closer he got, the more wrong it felt. The man was too tall, like someone had stretched him. His limbs hung oddly, too straight, too stiff. His clothes were worn-work overalls soaked in dirt and sweat and time, no shoes. Feet flat and cracked and bloodless, but the face, there wasn't one. Where his face should have been was just black, not skin, not cloth. A smear, like someone had rubbed it out with an eraser dipped in tar. No nose, no eyes. Just a pulsing, pitch-dark blot that sucked in the light and didn't give any back. Caleb stopped in his tracks. Every nerve screamed at him to back up, something primal. Caveman-level fear. Hey, Caleb's voice cracked. Do you need help? The man twitched, not his head. His shadow dot had moved sideways. Caleb took a step back. That's when the footsteps started again. But not from the man dot from behind Caleb. Slap, scrape, slap. Scrape dot. He spun around. Empty road. He turned back. The hollow man was gone. No movement. No wind. No trace. Just that crackling quiet again, heavier than before. Then the cruiser engine sputtered. Died. The lights cut out. He sprinted back, heart hammering like a wild thing in his chest, and yanked open the door. Inside the cab, it was colder than outside. Cold and damp like a root cellar. The rearview mirror was black. Not shadowed. Not broken dot, just black, like the face. He reached up, touched the mirror dot. It was warm, pulsing. He yanked his hand back, looked down. His fingers were smeared with something slick and dark. Oil? Blood? Ink? Then the whisper came. Not through the air, through the bones behind his ears. He pulled over, Caleb screamed. It wasn't a cry for help. It was an animal sound, born in his guts. The mirror began to drip. Thick, syrupy globs of black leaking down the windshield. He threw the car in reverse. Nothing. Slammed it into drive. Still nothing. The engine was dead, but the radio hissed back to life. Not a voice, just footsteps. Over and over. Slap. Scrape. Slap. Scrape dot, then laughter. Childlike at first, then deeper. Too deep. He jumped out, sprinted down the highway. Didn't look back. Not once. Not even when the wind picked up and the smell of burned meat hit him like a fist. Someone found him the next morning, 3 miles away, knees scraped raw, babbling nonsense. He said the name Hollow Man over and over. They sent him to a psych ward in Corpus Christi. Medically retired him a week later. He doesn't speak much anymore. But sometimes, at night, he tries to scratch something into the wall with a spoon dot. It's always the same phrase, misspelled and frantic. Don't stop at mile 13. Locals still say if you drive that stretch past 2 o'clock a.m., you'll see a tall man swaying in the center of the road. No face, just blackness. He never approaches. Never gestures dot. He waits dot, and if you stop. They say something gets in with you dot, and sometimes, when you look in your rear view, you see your own face missing. It's the kind of stretch of road where the sky goes on too long and the radio gives up halfway between towns. No matter how loud you crank it, there's just static dead air that feels like it's waiting for something to fill it. That's space. Between Lubbock and Abilene ain't much, just miles of empty cotton fields and wind turbines that look like broken crosses if the clouds hang low enough. Dale Mercer had seen all kinds of things on that road. Storms that came up out of nowhere like the sky was angry. Tornadoes that looked like God's fist. Jackrabbits big enough to rattle your bumper when they hit just right. But what happened on that Wednesday night didn't belong in the same world. He was hauling north, deadheading back to Lubbock after a drop in San Angelo, just trying to make it to the truck stop by dawn. Wind was howling something fierce. Had that dry, angry edge to it, the kind that scraped your windshield with dust even though it hadn't rained in weeks. That's when he saw the guy, standing by the side of the road, thumb out. Now that inn itself was weird. Nobody hitchhikes out there. Too flat. Too far. Too many stories. But this guy? He looked clean. Young. Early 20s maybe. Dressed like he just stepped out a church button-down shirt, jeans with a crease ironed in, hair combed back like it still mattered. He had a small black backpack and a calm kind of smile, like he knew you before you even rolled to a stop. Dale wasn't in the habit of picking up strangers, but the kid looked harmless. And there was that look like he knew Dale, like he'd been waiting. Where you headed? Dale asked through the passenger window. Home, the kid said. Just past Sweetwater. Dale nodded, popped the lock. Hop in. The moment the door closed, the temperature in the cab dropped. Not gradually, like a switch flipped. 1 second, it was warm and stale, the kind of heat that collects after a long ride with the AC off. Next, it was cold. Wet cold. Like breathing through a wet rag in January. The kid didn't notice. Or maybe he did and just didn't care. Name's Eli, he said. Dale. They rode in silence for a while. The radio wasn't working again. Just that long buzz of static. That seemed louder now. Dale tried to crank the heat, but the knob snapped off in his hand. Then he noticed the gas gauge. It was full when he left San Angelo. Full. He'd checked. But now the needle was sinking fast, like someone had drilled a hole in the tank. He glanced over. Eli hadn't moved. Hands folded neatly in his lap, still smiling. Still looking straight ahead. You live near Sweetwater? Dale asked, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. Used to. That wasn't the answer Dale expected. He flicked his eyes to the kid again. That's when he noticed it. The headlights caught the edge of a roadside sign and cast their shadows across the cab. His own shadow fell back against the driver's window. The wheel, the dash, all clear, but Eli. No shadow. None. The dashboard light passed over him like he wasn't even there. Dale's mouth went dry. You all right? He asked. Eli smiled wider. You ever been lost, Dale? Lost? Not the kind where you missed a turn. The kind where you don't know which part of you went missing. Where you can feel the pieces falling off inside, but nobody else seems to notice. Dale didn't answer. He was watching the fuel gauge bottom out. The warning light blinked red. Eli leaned in, and his breath fogged the window, even though the air outside was hot as hell. I tried walking home once. After the accident. Took me years. You ever tried walking without feet? Dale gripped the wheel tighter. He could feel the steering stiffen. The engine was whining now, louder than it should have been, like it was pushing against something that didn't want it to move forward. You died, Dale whispered. Eli's smile didn't fade. Only part of me, he said. The rest of me just needed a ride. Something knocked on the roof of the cab. Not once, not loud, just a soft tap. Like fingers. Or nails. Dale swerved. Tires screamed. The rig jackknifed into the gravel shoulder, and when he came to, chest heaving, there was no one in the passenger seat. Door still locked. Cab warm again. Fuel gauge back to full. He checked the mirrors, got out, looked underneath. Nothing. But on. The passenger window, in the fogged-up glass where breath had once lingered, were two words written backwards, still written. Dale drives a different route now. Avoids that stretch between Lubbock and Abilene like it's cursed. Doesn't pick up hitchhikers. Doesn't talk to shadows, because sometimes they don't have one, and sometimes they're just waiting for another ride home. Texarkana is the kind of place where things stay buried, not just secrets, but people. The city straddles the line like a drunk on a bar rail, one boot in Texas, the other in Arkansas, and it's got that kind of split soul feel, too half warm. Handshakes, half cold stares. You don't go digging around its edges, and if you hear something call your name at night, you keep your goddamn window shut. Joe Langston didn't listen. He was a road worker, blue collar through and through, running. A county-issued Ford with bad shocks and worse air conditioning. He'd been patching a washout on the old Highway 67 service road, just a drainage trench that had collapsed from months of rain. Not a big job. Lay in some pipe, pour concrete, and be home by dark. Except it was August, and the air was thick with skeeters and stink. The ditch smelled like wet rot, the kind that clings to your boots long after you scrape. Off. Joe heard the first whisper when he was bending down to grab his wrench. Just a little hiss that tickled the edge of his ear. Not a word, not. At first more like breath, but colder. He thought it was just the wind twisting down the pipe. But there wasn't any wind. The next day, he found his work gloves soaked from the inside. The rest of his truck was dry. No rain, no busted bottle, nothing. Just gloves that squished when he put his hands in them and stank of pond water and pennies. He laughed it off. Told Gary from the crew that some damn raccoon must have pissed on them, but Gary just stared, quiet-like. Then he said, "You hear it yet?" "Hear what?" Joe asked. "The ditch." And that was all Gary said. Wouldn't meet Joe's eyes the rest of the week. That night, Joe drove past the site on his way home, headlights skimming the orange cones and stacked rebar like bones in a graveyard. He slowed, just out of habit, and that's when he saw the water bubbling in the pipe. But it hadn't rained for 3 days. He got out curious and a little pissed, thinking maybe some asshole was dumping waste or backed up sewage. He clicked on his flashlight, aimed it at the mouth of the drainage pipe, and saw the fingers, small ones, child-sized, pale and bloated, the nails black, the joints swollen. They were reaching up out of the water, groping the inside of the pipe. Like they were trying to claw their way out. He didn't scream, didn't run, just backed away slow, got in his truck, locked the door like it mattered. He told himself it was swamp gas or a trick of the shadows or maybe just sleep deprivation. But deep down, something had shifted. Like a line he didn't know he'd been walking had suddenly vanished. The next morning, his rear tire was flat. No puncture, just sunken. Like something had sucked the air out from the inside. He jacked it up, pulled it off, and there lodged in the tread like a broken tooth was a jawbone, small, human, with 2 molars still clinging in the back. He didn't call the cops. He threw the bone in the brush and drove straight to the bar. Didn't even drink, just sat there until last call, clutching his keys like they were a crucifix. But things got worse. At night, the whispers got clearer. Joe, not a scream, not a cry, just soft and wet, like lips pressed against water. The sound would rise up from the floorboards of his house, echo through his vents, slip in beneath his pillow. He'd wake up drenched, with footprints tracked across the linoleum, muddy and barefoot, and always headed toward his bedroom. He tried to quit the job, said his back was shot, said he needed to be with his mama in Denton. But the county told him no contract was ironclad and they needed. The drainage finished by end of the month. So Joe went back. He poured fresh concrete at the ditch's mouth, layered it thick enough to cover bones. That night the concrete cracked, not from weight or rain. It split from beneath, bulged like something was pushing up through it. And Joe swore, as he stood there watching, that he could see tiny teeth embedded in the cement. Smiling, they found his truck upside down in a cotton field. The next morning, still running, no sign of Joe, no blood. Just a muddy handprint on the inside of the windshield and in the bed of the truck. His work boots standing upright. Each one full of water. They say you can still hear the whispers near that ditch when the humidity's high and the crickets go quiet. It always starts the same. Just your name, soft and slow. But if you stop and listen, if you look too long into that water, you might see a finger, then another, then a face, skin sliding off bone. Then your own reflection, only it's not blinking. It's smiling, and it's waiting for you to come closer. Darryl McCready had been running the I-10 stretch between El Paso and San Antonio for nearly 12 years. And he always said the loneliest place in Texas wasn't the desert, it was the cab of a semi parked in the middle of it at 2:47 a.m. The clock always read 2:47. He'd wake up drenched in sweat, hands gripping the thin blanket like it might keep something out. He didn't know what at first. Not really. The trouble started after a long haul out of Tucson, somewhere around the high scrub just east of Fort Stockton. Darryl had been driving straight for 14 hours, eyelids heavy as bricks, when he finally pulled into a rest stop. So empty it felt abandoned. One sodium vapor lamp flickered overhead, casting weird, twitching shadows across the gravel lot. The kind of place where even the bugs didn't bother to hum. He backed into a corner slot, killed the engine, and crawled into the sleeper cab. It was his favorite part of the truck, that little pocket of solitude, his womb on wheels. Tattered. Photos of his daughter taped to the cabinets. A cracked microwave that barely heated soup. One thin mattress and the smell of diesel in every breath. He dreamed of screaming, not his own. Someone else's. A woman, maybe. No, it could have been a child. The voice twisted in pitch, bounced between shrill and guttural. Then he felt it pressure on his chest like a weight, and then something hot dragged across his skin. When he snapped awake, the air was cold and sharp, and his shirt was wet. Not sweat. Blood. 3 thin, red lines stretched from his collarbone to his belly button, shallow but unmistakably real. Like a cat had clawed him in his sleep, but he didn't own a cat. And he was alone. He told himself it must have been a dream. Maybe he'd scratched himself in his sleep. Maybe the shirt had bunched weird. Truckers get weird sores all the time. That's what he told himself anyway. The second time, it was deeper. He'd parked near a gas station outside Balmerhea, behind a closed taco stand. Wind whistled through the cholla trees like a broken flute. That night, he dreamed he was choking. Something was sitting on his chest, whispering in his ear, not words, exactly, but a rhythm. Like breath. Hot, moist breath that smelled like old meat and turned his stomach. The whispers kept time with his heartbeat. The pain came again, 3 claws, dragging slower this time, savoring it. He woke screaming. This time, the marks bled. Not much. Just enough to ruin the sheets and make him sit in the cab for the next 3 hours with every light on and a knife in his lap. He started locking the doors, then chaining them from the inside. Bought a length of heavy steel chain from an old hardware store in Van Horn and rigged it around the handle like he was sealing himself in a tomb. Didn't help. The dreams got worse. He'd dream of crawling things, pale shapes with too many joints that scuttled along the corners of motel walls. He dreamed of the woman with no lips, mouth torn open to the ears, whispering things about roads that weren't mapped, exits that didn't exist. The claw marks spread arms, thighs, once just under the jawline like it had almost gone for the throat. He went to a clinic in San Angelo. The nurse took one look at him and asked if someone was hurting him. He told her no, told her it was sleepwalking. The look in her eyes told him she didn't believe it, but she didn't press it was. The fifth night that sealed it outside Fort Stockton. Middle of nowhere. A windstorm had just passed through, and sand still clung to the windows like old ghosts. Darrell was so tired he felt drunk. He locked the cab, wrapped the chain, pushed his duffel against the door for good measure. Drank 2 shots of NyQuil and passed out cold at exactly 2:47 a.m. His eyes snapped open. The air was still. He couldn't move. His body was pinned. The sleeper cab was darker than pitch, like the light had been sucked out. He heard breathing, slow, deep, not from outside. From above from the ceiling. He couldn't see it, but he felt it. Hanging upside down, face inches from his. The breath hit his nose and filled it with the stench of rot and rust and something worse. Something old. Then came the voice. Not a whisper this time. You invited me. He couldn't scream. Couldn't blink. Couldn't even cry. Just laid there as the claws 5 this time pressed against his skin. Cold and sharp. They didn't drag this time. They punched. Down into his shoulder. Into his chest. He felt them scraping bone when he woke. It was morning. Cab door still chained. Duet of hoof prints small, like from a fawn, but wrong in shape marked in dried blood across the ceiling. He checked the chain. Still locked. The windows sealed. The cab untouched except for one thing. Scrawled into the foggy inside of the windshield, written backward from the passenger side in smears of something brown and tacky. Stop sleeping here. He never did again. He sold the truck 2 days later. Quit hauling, moved to Ohio, took a job at a parts store. He doesn't talk about the road anymore. Doesn't sleep in cars. Sleeps with the lights on, the windows boarded, but he still wakes. Up at 2:47 a.m. and sometimes, when it's real quiet, he swears he hears something breathing just inches above his face. They say there's a stretch between San Angelo and Junction where the road hums wrong. It ain't the tires, and it ain't the engine. It's the pavement like something underneath it is alive, shifting real slow, waiting for your weight so it can breathe just once before going still again. Most folks drive right on by without ever noticing. But not the truckers. Not the ones who've been hauling long enough to remember rest stop 17. Back then. It was just a gravel pull-off with a flickering light, a busted vending machine that spat warm soda, and a bathroom with no stall doors. The kind of place that smelled like old diesel, piss, and sun-baked plastic. A nothing place. But it gave you a break from the miles. Let your legs stretch and your head clear. At least, that's what it was supposed to do. Then came the laughing. It started one summer, late 91. July heat that could boil asphalt and cook a possum before it stopped twitching. Truckers began to say weird things on the CB. They'd key up after midnight, voice tight, and say, "You boys hear that?" And then just go quiet. Sometimes they'd mention laughter. Not a chuckle, not a human sound. A kind of high, warbling cackle, like something trying to copy how people sound when they think something's funny. But it didn't know why. It got worse. One driver, old guy named Mace, used to run cattle feed between Sonora and San Angelo. He pulled in around 3 a.m., bone tired, needing to splash some water on his face. Said he stepped into the men's room and the mirror was covered in handprints. Tiny ones, child-sized. But the stall doors? They'd grown back. Metal ones, welded right onto the walls, even though the place hadn't had doors in years. And behind. The middle one, someone laughed just once. He thought it was a prank. Maybe a drifter or a tweaker hiding in there. So he kicked it open. Nobody inside. Just dirt, dust, and a child's voice that whispered, "Found you." Mace never stopped at another rest stop again. Said he'd piss in a bottle and sleep in his cab from then on. Died 6 months later when his rig jackknifed outside Del Rio. Witnesses said he swerved for no reason. No deer, no weather, just screamed and turned the wheel. His last words on the CB, "She's in the mirror." They tore down Rest Stop 17 the next year. No announcement. No mention on the highway report. Just cones one day, rubble the next. Like it never existed, except it still does. You can't find it on a map, not anymore. But sometimes, just sometimes, your GPS will flicker between markers. Just a blip. A momentary ping where the screen goes fuzzy and shows a road that doesn't quite match where you're supposed to be. And if you're unlucky and the moon's hiding behind clouds and you've been driving long enough that the hum of your wheels becomes a lullaby, you might see it. A clearing off to the right past the mesquite and low cedar scrub. No lights. Just shadows that don't sit still. A feeling like you're being invited. And the laughter. God help you. The laughter. It starts soft like a radio left on in the cab. Then it grows, bouncing around the static, playing hide and seek with your signal until it's all you can hear. It sounds young, female, maybe, but cracked around the edges. A laugh that stretches too long and bends in places. It ain't happy. It ain't right. It's hungry. Some truckers say if you talk back, if you say, "Who's there?" or "What do you want?" you'll hear the sound of little footsteps behind your trailer. And if you look in your side mirror, you might see the restroom. The old one, still standing, lit by a single bulb swaying in wind that doesn't touch the trees. And someone's inside, laughing. One driver, a rookie hauling furniture out of Houston, made the mistake of pulling over. Just wanted to pee, stretch, maybe check that noise he thought he heard in the rear axle. They found his truck the next morning, parked neat on the shoulder. Doors locked. Engine cool. Not a mark on it. He was gone. But the dashcam caught something. At 3:09 a.m., the laughter started. A full 3 minutes of it. Echoing through the speakers, bouncing from side to side, closer each time. Then the screen fuzzed out. They played it back in court. Said it had to be a glitch. A prank. Something corrupted in the feed. But the mechanic, who inspected the cab, he wouldn't get back in it. Said he saw tiny handprints in the frost on the inside of the windshield. And carved in the condensation just above the wheel. Found you. They say if you're driving through the Texas dark and you hear laughter that don't belong to you or the radio, don't stop. Don't look in your mirrors. And for the love of God, don't answer. Because Rest Stop 17's still there, somewhere. Between San Angelo and Junction. Waiting. And the laugher, she's never left. They said it was the worst winter North Texas had seen in decades. February hit like a sledgehammer to the spine. Ice storms, blackouts, power lines snapping like wishbones in the dark. Wichita Falls became a ghost town overnight. Half the truck stops went dark. The rest served coffee thick enough to chew and cold enough to make your teeth ache. Diesel froze in the lines. Tires cracked. Roads disappeared. But dispatch doesn't care about frostbite and ghost stories. And neither did the boys in Convoy 9. There were 4 rigs in total. Eastbound out of Amarillo, headed for Texarkana with industrial generators and de-icing chemicals. The kind of run that pays triple if you keep your mouth shut and the CB open. Travis Dogpatch Harper was in the lead rig. Big, red Peterbilt with a snarling hog painted on the cab door. Behind him was Slim real name Ellis, but no one used it, followed by a guy named Carter who chain-smoked more than he spoke, and finally Frankie Del Rio, who was 22 and green as spring grass but eager to prove himself. They hit the Tevdiv himself. They hit the Peavards 22 and green as spring green as spring grass but eager to prove himself. They hit the two. Storm north of Wichita Falls around 1:45 in the morning. The snow didn't fall so much as it slammed the ground sideways, whipped by a wind that sounded like it was howling someone's name. The highway disappeared under a thick layer of slush and ice. And then, worse, under snow so white it looked like bleach poured straight from the sky. The world turned colorless. Dodpatch came over the radio first. "Keep it tight, boys. Visibility's gone to hell." Slim replied with a grunt. Frankie, nervous, said, "Still see your lights, boss." But Carter was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that gets inside your teeth. Then the CB crackled, just a whisper. A female voice. Wrong. Wait, no one acknowledged it. Probably just interference, they thought. Hell, the wind could make a radio sing in this part of Texas. Another 10 minutes passed. The road dipped and twisted in ways it hadn't before. The GPS showed them veering off the highway, but none of them remembered taking an exit. The snow swallowed the signs, the lights. Even Tom Got Slim broke the silence. Dogpatch. What road? Are we on? I-44, last I checked. No man, no signs, no cars. Ain't seen no taillights in 20 minutes. This ain't right. Then came Frankie. His voice was shaking. "I saw something in the snow. Just now. Looked like bones." Dogpatch laughed. The kind of forced laugh that sounds more like a cough. "Snow does weird things. You're fine. Just stay straight." That's when Carter finally came on. His voice wasn't right. It was low, distant, like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. "We're driving on bones." No one said anything. The silence swallowed the convoy. Then he said it again. Louder. "We're driving on bones." Dogpatch flipped to emergency frequency. No response. All channels turned to static. Thick, wet static, like something was gurgling on the other end. Slim tried to brake. His rig slid sideways. He never came back on the line. Frankie screams. We're the next thing they heard. I see them under the ice. They're looking at me. They're smiling. The radio popped. Fried. The snow cleared suddenly. Dogpatch found himself driving on a flat stretch of black, ice that shimmered like obsidian under the stars, and beneath the surface, just visible if you squinted hard enough, were shapes. Not rocks. Not cracks. Bones. 1,000 of them. Spines, skulls, jaws frozen mid-scream, little handprints. Some still moving, pressing against the underside of the ice like they wanted out. CB coughed one last time. Frankie's voice. I can see your lights now. And then, nothing. When the rescue team found Dogpatch's truck 2 days later, it was parked neatly on a dry stretch of highway that hadn't seen snow all winter. The engine was cold, the keys still in the ignition, and Dogpatch was in the driver's seat, eyes open, mouth wide, hands gripping the wheel so tight his fingernails had torn free from the bed. His lips were blue, his pupils frozen and etched. Into the inside of the windshield, traced in frost, were 3 words, "You were warned." The other 3 trucks were never found. No wreckage, no bobbies, not even tire tracks. Now, truckers say if you're driving east of Wichita Falls during a snowstorm and your CB starts whispering in a woman's voice, you don't respond. You cut your lights, you pull over, you wait, because if you don't, you might end up on that road. The ice road, the one that leads nowhere but never lets go. Glenn Kersey wasn't the kind of man who rattled easy. 49, 6 years in the Army, 12 behind the wheel. He'd seen action in the Persian Gulf, survived a rollover outside Flagstaff in '09, and once punched a coked-up hitchhiker who tried to stab him in Amarillo. Glenn didn't spook. Not until that night. It started simple enough. Like most nightmares do, the delivery had gone off without a hitch-frozen shellfish to a warehouse in Shreveport. The bill was signed, the trailer swept, and he was coasting. Light back toward Dallas to pick up his next load. Dispatch had told him the reefer trailer was still on, but there was nothing in it. Empty. Cold and clean. He was grateful for that. No bouncing boxes, no shifting pallets. Just an easy haul through East Texas under a heavy moon. Just after midnight, somewhere near the quiet patch of Highway 64 east of Tyler, the first sound came. Not from the radio. Not from the wind. From the trailer. It was subtle at first. A dull thump, like something had slid across the floor and bumped the steel. Glenn glanced in his mirror, half expecting to see a stowaway or maybe some old crate rolling around. But there was nothing, just the icy white fog spilling from the trailer's vent ports, glowing under the moonlight like ghost breath. He reached for the CB mic. "Breaker 1 to 9, you boys ever hear of a ghost in a reefer?" he said with a half-laugh. Silence. Then a reply, "Glenn, that you?" It was Frankie from down in San Angelo. "What are you running?" "I'm not showing no load manifest for you." Glenn frowned. He hadn't told anyone what he was hauling. Hell, he wasn't hauling. Empty trailer. Frozen air, nothing more, he said. "Then why's there voices coming off your axle?" Static hissed over the channel, then a distant clank, louder this time, sharp and deliberate. Like fists on metal. And then something else. Not static. Not freight. A scream. It came from the back of the trailer. Not electronic. Not distant. Inside. He jammed the brakes. Tires shrieked against the asphalt. The whole rig shuddered as it came to a stop. Glenn sat there, hands frozen on the wheel, listening. Another bang. Then another. Louder. Closer. Something or someone was in there. He killed the engine and stepped out, boots crunching on gravel as he rounded the trailer. Fog coiled off the refrigeration vents like dry ice. He stood beneath the glowing red. Light mounted on the corner panel and listened. That's when the screaming began in earnest. It didn't sound like one person. It sounded like many, dozens maybe. Voices layered over voices. High-pitched, raw, tortured sounds like people being flayed alive inside a steel drum. They shrieked. They howled. They begged. He stumbled back, heart jackhammering. What the hell was happening? The trailer was empty. He had seen it cleaned himself before departure. It didn't make sense. He climbed back into the cab, hands trembling. He tried the CB again. "Dispatch, this is Kersey. I've got..." He stopped. There was a new sound now. It was laughter. Not from the radio. From inside the trailer. Soft at first. Then rising, cracking mad. "Dispatch, repeat. This is Kersey. I got hell. I don't even know what I got. There's people in my trailer. Screaming. I didn't load nobody." The response came, low and afraid. "Kersey, get off that road." He blinked. "What?" "We got other calls. From drivers. They say they saw your rig, but it ain't got no cab. Just a trailer, ridden low, and something inside. Screaming. This ain't the first time. Someone's heard it. You need to leave." But Glenn didn't leave. He couldn't. Something had changed. The screams were moving. Now they were pressing forward up the trailer, closer to the cab. It sounded like fingernails scraping steel, hundreds of them. Then came a thump right behind the wall of his sleeper cab. And then, breathing. Not his own. Not human. It was wet, gurgling. as if lungs full of icy fluid were trying to heave air again. He locked the doors and gunned the engine, but the wheels spun in place, stuck on a patch of wet ground that hadn't been there minutes before. He looked in the mirror. The trailer door was open. Light spilled out, not white, not yellow, but blue, like the color of freezer burn, and shadows moved inside it, bent, crawling. One of them, he swore, had no face, just a smear of something. Black, shifting like oil over bone. The screaming hadn't stopped. It grew louder, filled the cab. Glenn clutched his ears, mouth wide, eyes bulging as the sound poured into his head. He bit down hard. Blood filled his mouth. His scream joined theirs. That's how they found him. The rig jackknifed into the trees. Cab crushed. Trailer peeled open like a sardine tin. No freight, no bodies, just frost, and deep claw marks etched into the aluminum floor. They took Glenn to a facility near Lubbock. He hasn't spoken since, but every few nights, nurses hear him whispering toward the ceiling. Sometimes he giggles, and sometimes, on heavy, humid nights, truckers driving through East Texas hear it. That faint, icy sound riding the wind. A reefer. Trailer gliding down the road with no cab, no lights, and just one thing inside its screams that never end. You drive Highway 90 east out of Beaumont, past the swampy cypress groves and sagging telephone lines that slice through the low-hanging fog like rusted stitches, and you'll pass an old Coca-Cola billboard right before the shoulder narrows near the old Minton truck stop. The sign's nothing special at first glance, unfaded reds, white cursive text flaking off, and a girl in a 1950s-style polka-dot dress holding up a sweating bottle of Coke like she's toasting the road itself. But if you drive past it at night, especially between midnight and 3 a.m., you'll notice something. Not all at once. It's small at first. Maybe her eyes seem too clear, too wet. Maybe that smile doesn't look quite right. Any more, and then the blinking starts. It's a slow blink. Deliberate. Not some glitch of the headlights or play of shadows on old paint. Real. Human. Slow. Every trucker who's seen it says the same thing. It's not like she's looking at the road. She's looking at you. The first confirmed story came from a man named Ernest Ernie Dupree, a Gulfport native who'd been driving rigs since the Reagan administration. Ernie was known for telling tall tales and drinking a bit too much diner coffee, but he wasn't a liar. Not really. It was late October 1999, during a night run from Port Arthur. He saw the billboard just as he'd passed Minton's. Said the girl's smile looked tired. That's the word he used. Like she'd been holding it too long and something in her face had started to slip. She blinked, he told the dispatcher. She goddamn blinked, and I saw her eyes shift. Dispatcher laughed it off. Thought Ernie was joking. But Ernie pulled into a way station outside Lake Charles 40 minutes later, white as snow, and refused to go back that way ever again. He quit the company 2 weeks later, bought a fishing boat, and moved out to Sabine Lake. Paint don't blink was all he ever said after that. In 2008, a storm ripped part of the billboard's bottom panel loose. A new driver, Julie Marks, swerved when she saw what she claimed looked like fingers pressed against the inside of the sign just under the Coke bottle. Not painted fingers, real ones, pale, slender, with blood beneath the nails like she'd been clawing to get out. Julie ran her 18-wheeler into the ditch, broke both legs. Sod she would have rather died than stop under that sign. When rescue crews got there, they said her truck was locked. Brakes melted from the inside. But there was no sign of anything, no girl, no fingers, nothing. Julie never drove again. She moved back to Michigan and got a job at a bakery. But when her old dispatcher tracked her down years later for an interview on haunted highways, she started screaming over the phone when he mentioned Beaumont. By 2014, The rumors had turned into full-blown lore. Truckers started refusing to take nighttime routes east of the city, especially solo runs. Some companies rerouted their rigs to I-10, even if it meant longer hauls. One driver, Caleb Duncan, posted a dashcam video to a truckers forum, now long since scrubbed from the internet, that showed headlights catching the billboard just as he passed. For a split second, the girl's eyes moved. She didn't just blink. They rolled toward the camera. You could see the glint, a shine that doesn't come from paint or weathered vinyl dot, and then the camera shorted out. The real trouble began the night they tried to replace the billboard dot in 2017. A crew from an Austin ad agency was sent to update it with a fresh campaign for some soft drink nobody drinks anymore. 4 men went up at dusk. Only 2 came back down by dawn. 1, Jerome Pierce, quit mid-climb. Said the air felt wrong, heavy, like something was pressing down on his chest. The second guy, Keller, finished the ladder and stared at the girl's face for a long time. Too long. They said he started talking to her, whispering. The other crew member, Tomas, climbed up to check on him. Saad Keller's eyes had gone black, like ink poured over the pupils. He's smiling like her, Thomas said. Same crooked mouth. Same dead joy. They had to pull Keller down with a crane. He never spoke again. He just sits in a private care facility now in Tyler, drawing that same face over and over on the walls. And Tomas? He tried to burn the billboard. Doused it in gasoline and lit a flare. Nothing happened. The fire wouldn't catch. That's when Tomas went missing. His truck was found 2 counties over, parked neatly behind an abandoned diner. The only clue was a Coke bottle on the passenger seat full, still sweating. Ice-cold. Thomas hated Coke. Today, the billboard still stands. No one touches it anymore. The city says it's outside jurisdiction. The land's owned by an old shell company no one can trace. At night, it watches. And now the rumors say she's not smiling at all. That her teeth are stained, her lips cracked, that her dress is darker than it used to be, like it's soaked through, and if you stop, if you break down or run out of gas near that spot, don't look up. Don't turn on your cabin light. Don't fiddle with the radio, because if she sees you see her, she might come down, and you'll blink just once, and she'll be in your seat, smiling that dead smile, holding that bottle, and you won't ever drive again. Tommy Sanchez had driven that route 100 times, maybe more. A quiet man with a face weathered by heat and habit, he'd been hauling frozen meat from Lubbock to El Paso for nearly 12 years. Same reefer, same rhythm. Drive, load, unload. Repeat. And every other week, the Trans-Mountain Highway greeted him like an old, brooding friend, especially that goddamn tunnel. They say the Franklin Mountains are older than the bones of Texas itself. The locals talk about spirits buried in the rocks, of ancient things that whisper when the wind kicks up just right. Superstition? Maybe. But every trucker who passed through that tunnel knew the story. 13 seconds. That's how long the radio would die, like a stopwatch buried under the concrete. No static, no fuzz. Just dead air, like someone unplugged the world. Tommy never cared much for ghost stories. He was a man of simple truths. Oil pressure, tire tread, coffee strong enough to kill a mule. But something had always felt off about that tunnel. It wasn't just the signal drop or the sudden hush. It was the way the shadows moved, too slow, like thick syrup slithering along the ceiling. And the lights? They flickered when they shouldn't, timed like an old film reel skipping frames. That October night started normal enough. He left Lubbock around 6 p.m., the sun dipping low behind dust-haze skies. The air was damp, clinging to everything. He stopped at a Chevron outside Midland, filled up, grabbed a coffee, and checked the reefer temp. Everything read fine, routine. He reached the outskirts of El Paso around midnight. The moon was a silver dime buried in a quilt of storm clouds, and the road glistened from a rain that had just passed through. The city lights were dim behind him, swallowed by the elevation, and the mountain loomed up like a black wave ready to crash down. He turned the radio up. An old George Jones song played, one about heartbreak and whiskey and lost dogs. As he approached the tunnel, the usual static fluttered across the CB, then nothing, exactly as expected. But this time, it was different. It wasn't just quiet. It was hollow. The kind of silence that has weight. The kind that presses against your ears like you're sinking underwater. Then came the breath. Not his, not in the cab. It came from the wiring. A slow, thick, wet draw of air, like a dying man breathing through his throat. He reached to turn off the radio, but his hand froze. The passenger side window fogged up. One moment it was clear. The next, hazed with dew from the inside. A small handprint appeared, then another. Fingers spread wide. Palms pressed flat. He blinked, thinking maybe the cold air from the vents was fogging up the glass. But that wasn't how it worked. It never fogged like that. Not with the AC on low. And certainly not with pressure. The way those handprints looked, you'd swear a child had been sitting there, climbing, clawing, trying to get out. And then he saw it. The face. It wasn't in the reflection. It wasn't floating outside the truck. It was inside the glass. Pressed flush. The skin translucent and waxy, almost gelatinous. Eyes milk white and rolling under thin eyelids like loose pearls. Its nose was crooked, broken maybe. But it was the mouth that made Tommy's stomach roll. Too wide, too wrong. A grin that split the jaw like a tear in fabric, exposing teeth. Tiny, perfect baby teeth lined in double rows like a shark's. The thing didn't move, just watched. Tommy screamed. A sound he'd later deny. The truck jerked left. Tires screeched. Metal kissed concrete with a shriek as the trailer sideswiped the tunnel wall. Sparks lit up the darkness. And still, the face stared, unblinking. He floored it. The engine howled as he tore out the other end of the tunnel, windshield streaked. With rain, his heart threatening to climb into his throat. And then, as suddenly as it started, the radio crackled back to life. George Jones picked up where he left off, crooning about dying dreams. The handprints were gone. The window was bone. Dry? The cab? Empty. Just him. Just Tommy. He didn't stop until he reached a motel in Las Cruces. Slept with the lights on and a tire iron beside the bed. Called his dispatcher the next morning and told them he wasn't taking the mountain again. "I'll go around," he said. "I don't care if it's 2 hours longer." 2 months later, a rookie driver named Darren Buckley was found dead in that tunnel. His truck had crashed at low speed, almost like he just stopped steering. No drugs, no alcohol. Just a blank stare frozen on his face. The report said the cabin was sealed. No forced entry, but all the windows? Fogged up from the inside. Hundreds of handprints. Some so small they looked like they came from infants. Now, there are whispers among the older drivers. Some say it's a ghost, a child killed during the tunnel's construction. Others say it's something older. Something that was buried in the rock long before concrete ever touched it. A watcher. A mimic. A thing that remembers your face once you see it. They say if you're lucky, you'll only see the fog. If you're not, well, maybe you'll feel it too, that cold breath down your neck. That press of fingers just behind the glass. And if your radio dies for exactly 13 seconds, don't look. They say it started just past dusk. The time when the Texas sky bleeds out the last of its orange and slips into that bruised violet before night swallows the land whole. The cicadas were loud that evening, louder than usual, and the air over. Marble Falls was thick enough to chew. Earl Denton was just trying to get home. He'd left a lumber yard in Spicewood, hauling aluminum sheet bundles toward Llano and his old Peterbilt. Rig was maybe 20 years out of date, but Earl kept her humming like she was factory fresh. He loved that truck more than any woman he'd ever known, which, by his own count, wasn't many. Earl was a man who liked silence. Didn't play much on the radio except the occasional scratch of old Hank or Merle. He liked hearing the road talk back, gravel under tires, wind tugging at the mirrors. He liked the way his truck creaked like a breathing thing. He didn't much believe in ghosts or spooks or devils, not unless they were human. That's what he told the bartender at the Iron Spur just the week before. Hell walks on 2 feet and drinks Lone Star, he'd said, laughing over his whiskey. But that night, Earl would have given anything to have been wrong. He hit the stretch between Backbone Ridge and Mormon Mill Road around 7:45. The temperature had dropped by then, a strange chill settling in that didn't match the June heat. He even rolled up the window, rubbed the goosebumps from his arms. That's when it started. The rearview mirror, the one mounted inside the cab above the windshield, started to vibrate. Just a little at first. A buzz, like it had picked up some weird frequency. He reached up, adjusted it, tightened the screw. But when he looked into it, he saw something he couldn't explain. There were headlights behind him, except there weren't. He leaned over, checked the side mirrors. Nothing there. Looked again, no cars, no trucks. Just the dying light reflecting off the asphalt. But when he glanced back at the rear view, the lights were still there. 2 orbs, faint and yellow, flickering like old candles. Floating too high off the road to be normal. He felt a cold sweat bloom on his neck. His stomach tightened. The lights stayed. Didn't gain. Didn't recede. Just hovered, unblinking. Then they moved. The lights separated slowly, widening apart like the eyes of a beast adjusting to get a better look. That's when he heard the first whisper dot, not through the CB, not through the cab speakers. It came through the mirror's dot, low, wet syllables, like wind through molasses, something like a laugh except crueler, hungrier. The sound seemed to echo inside his skull, not around him. Earl tried to shake it off, told himself it was exhaustion, the heat, maybe the cheap gas station coffee, but when he blinked, he saw it. The face dot, it was in the mirror now, pressed against the glass from inside. The skin was smooth, gray as wax paper. No nose, just slits. Where the eyes should have been slits that moved, pulsing open and shut like gills. And teeth. Rows of too small, too numerous teeth, grinning like it knew something he didn't. He slammed the brakes. Nothing happened. He yanked the gear into drive. Still nothing. The truck lurched dash backward. It was slow at first. A crawl. But it kept going. No foot on the pedal. No gear engaged. The engine whined in protest like it didn't want to obey. But something else had taken the wheel. Earl shouted. Swore. He threw the door open. Thought about jumping. But when he looked down, no road. Just black. Not asphalt, not dirt, just nothing. A void where the ground should have been. A pit without bottom dot, and the mirrors, every mirror, even the little round blind spot ones, all of them now pulsed with the same image. That face. Closer now, shifting, stretching, as if trying to crawl out. Earl screamed. He tore one mirror from its bracket, threw it out the window, watched it vanish into the dark like it had never been. But the moment it left, the whispering got louder. The image doubled in the remaining mirrors. A dozen faces. All the same, all smiling. He tried the horn. It blared. Like a dying animal. He turned the wheel. The truck didn't care. It kept reversing. Fast now. Trees blurred past, branches clawing at the cab, and then laughter, not his, not human. He clutched the steering wheel. His hands wouldn't let go. Skin burned against the vinyl. It melted, seared into the plastic like a brand. His mouth stretched, open wider than it should have, his tongue swelling, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The final thing he saw, they think, was that face right there, nose to nose in the center of the rear view. No more grin. Just hunger. They found him. The next morning, the truck upside down in a dry arroyo near an old cattle gate. Not a scratch on the road to suggest how it got there. No brake marks, no turn. No damage to the truck itself. But Earl was dead. His body was cold. His hands were fused to the wheel. Mouth open so wide his jaw was cracked. And his eyes? Gone. Not scooped. Not bleeding. Just ... absent ... The mirrors were all shattered ... except one. The rearview ... and when the first deputy looked into it, just for a second, he swore he saw something move. Not a reflection, something inside. Now folks around marble. Falls say if you see a truck going backward along 1431, don't try to stop it. Don't even watch it pass. Keep your eyes down. Mirrors covered ... because whatever took Earl Denton that night, it still rides along. There's a place just past the Sam Houston National Forest where the pines lean in like they're eavesdropping and the highway starts to feel a little too narrow. It's not marked on newer GPS apps, but it's still there, just 100 yards off the southbound lane of I-45. Past mile marker 217. It's an old rest stop. Forgotten looking. State funded in some year nobody remembers and left to rot by bureaucrats who'd rather pave new roads than fix the old ghosts clinging to. The old ones. The lots cracked and splitting. Tufts of grass rising through the asphalt like bones poking through skin. The lampposts hum even when they're not on. And the air smells like something sour that's been buried too long. There's a restroom building made of red brick that's turned black with time. Graffiti scrawled in loops and slashes like desperate prayers. Nobody sticks around long. They pull in, do their business, get back on the road without making eye contact with the building or each other, because everybody who's ever stopped there more than once knows the same thing. The last stall in the men's room is always locked. Doesn't matter if you come by at noon or 3 in the morning. Doesn't matter if the place has been deserted for days. That door will be shut tight, the little bolt flipped to occupied, and not a single sound will come from the inside. Most people ignore it. A few assume it's busted. A broken latch, maybe, or a door swollen in the humidity. A lazy maintenance crew. A tired excuse, but some folks get curious. Pete Morrison was one of those. He was a seasoned driver. 30 years of route stretching from El Paso to New Orleans, the kind of guy who called his truck she and knew every decent diner south of Dallas. He didn't spook easy. Didn't believe in ghosts or curses or things that crept under your skin when you weren't looking. It was mid-August when it happened. The kind of thick Texas heat that makes your bones sweat and your steering wheel scald. Pete had been hauling refrigeration units, of all things, and the irony of his broken AC wasn't lost on him. He was looking for a spot to stretch, piss, maybe check his tires. When he pulled into Rest Stop 8, the lot was empty. Not even a single other rig. No idling engines. No flicker of headlights in the trees. Just the hiss of cicadas and the hum of those damn light poles that hadn't worked in years. He went into the restroom, tired and sore. The tile floor was cold under his boots, and the air inside was 10 degrees cooler than outside, like it was. Sealed off from the world, 2 stalls. First one open, clean enough. But the second far end, under a flickering ceiling light, was closed, locked. He glanced down out of habit. No feet, just shadow, and then curiosity. He stared at that door for a long time, tilted his head, called out, "Hey, buddy, you okay in there?" No response. He waited, leaned closer. Silence. Then he crouched. Pete told people later that he didn't know why he did it, just that it felt important, like something was tugging at him, pulling him forward like a hook behind his sternum. He dropped to one knee. The tile was damp, too damp, and cold, freezing actually. He blinked, rubbed at his eyes. That's when he realized the air had gone dead quiet. No buzzing lights, no cicadas, not even his own breath in his ears. He leaned forward, tilted his head, looked under the door. Nothing. Not feet, not boots, not a shadow. Just blackness, like the underside of a bed in a house where someone died. That thick, endless dark. And then dash movement. Slow, deliberate, like something was slithering toward him. He didn't see it exactly. It was more like the dark got deeper, richer, like something was curling through it. He leaned in closer, squinting, trying to understand. Then he heard it. A whisper, not a voice exactly, but a feeling. A soft, rotten presence brushing the inside of his head. Not words, just intent, a promise. Something old and hungry. Something that didn't belong in the world. And before Pete could move, before he could even think, an arm slid into view under the door. It was long. Too long. Bent wrong. The skin was paper pale, stretched tight over bone, with fingers like splinters. Nails like rusted needles. It reached for him. Didn't grab, just reached. Touched the tip of his boot, and Pete screamed. He scrambled back, slipped on the wet tile, smacked his head on the wall. His vision went sideways, and when he opened his eyes again, the door was ajar. Just slightly. He couldn't see inside. Didn't want to. He ran. Didn't even zip up. Stumbled into the sunlight, barefoot, screaming. A patrol car found him 3 miles down the road, still running, mumbling things about whispers and eyes in the floor and the stall that watches back. Pete's mind broke that day. His wife said he hasn't slept a full night since. He sits in a chair most days, rocking, eyes glassy. He says one word over and over like it's his last grip on reality. Under. They locked the rest stop up a few months later. The state blamed foundation issues and vandalism. But the real reason, a maintenance worker went in with a pry bar, tried to open the locked stall. The metal warped. The hinges groaned like something breathing in reverse. Then the lights went out, and when they came back on, he was on the floor with both ears bleeding. He couldn't hear anymore. But worse, he understood something. Something he won't talk about. Just sits on his porch with his Bible, tapping on the same page over and over. Psalm 23. But here's the thing. Truckers still see the rest stop. Still pull in, sometimes when they're too tired to think straight. The building's there, just like before. But the windows are black now. And the men's room door is always open. You can go in if you want. The first stall works, just fine. But if you look down the line, you'll see the last one. Locked. Always locked. Until the day it isn't. And then you'll hear it too, that voice. That whisper that doesn't need sound. And once you've heard it, friend, you don't ever stop playing rest stop roulette. The Sabine River Bridge looks like any other stretch of rural blacktop when the sun's up. A ribbon of rust-colored steel cutting across a stretch of swampy East Texas lowland. Most days it carries log trucks, bait vans, the odd camper headed for Toledo Bend, and plenty of tired rigs running back and forth between Jasper and the Louisiana line. But locals know not to drive it between 3 and 5 a.m., especially in March when the fog gets thick as soup and twice as strange. They say sometimes the mist rolls in not from the river, but from underneath the bridge. And they say sometimes when it gets real quiet, you can hear it hum, not the wind, not your tires. A hum low, wet, and constant. Like something alive. Danny. Latham didn't believe in ghost stories. He was the kind of man who scoffed at them, spat sunflower shells on the dash, and said things like, "People hear what they want to hear." He was a practical guy. A man of tools, schedules, oil changes, and logbooks. If it didn't burn diesel, he didn't pay it much mind. He'd been hauling timber eastbound for over a decade. Long nights, heavy loads, and a lot of bad gas station. Coffee. He preferred the night hauls, less traffic, less talk. He didn't mind the silence until the silence started talking back. It was just past 3:15. Come when he crossed into the fog for the first time. A thick, dense wall of it stood just before the bridge, and he figured it was just the swamp breathing heavy again. Happens. The Sabine's always been a weird river, shallow and slow, with cypress trees that look like they walked in from a nightmare. The mist rolled over the water in slow folds, gray and greasy looking, like smoke that had been soaked in oil, but this fog was different. It didn't just blur the world, it swallowed it. Danny flicked on his high beams. They hit a wall of white. He slowed the truck. The tires clicked rhythmically over the expansion joints of the bridge. 1, 2, 1, 2. Then, nothing. No sound, not even the hum of the engine. That's when he noticed the humming. Not mechanical, organic, vibrating through the seat and into his spine, like someone had pressed tuning forks into his bones. He leaned forward, squinting into the mist, and that's when the cab began to cool. Not just the usual night chill. This was cold, sharp, deep cold, like the kind you only feel 6 feet underground. The hum grew louder. Then something strange happened. The radio turned on by itself, not a station. Not static. Just ... A sound, breathless, rhythmic, like a woman humming a lullaby through broken teeth. Danny swore and reached to turn the dial, but it wouldn't budge. His fingers trembled. That's when he saw it, a shape. Mid-span of the bridge. It wasn't walking. It was gliding, barefoot, pale and bent, arms too long. Head cocked to the side like it was listening to something. The hum stopped. Then it spoke. Not out loud. Inside his head. "You never said goodbye." Danny jerked the wheel. The truck swerved, tires screeching against the steel grates. He hit the brakes. The rig slid to a halt, engine sputtering. The figure was gone. He sat there, panting, hands clamped around the wheel. His eyes stung. His chest ached like it had forgotten how to breathe. Then the fog moved, not with the wind. Against it. It slithered along the edges of the bridge, crept up around the windows, pressed in like a lover returning after death. Something sharp scraped. Across the passenger side window, not a hand, not claws. Something slow, wet, like a single fingernail made of bone. Danny flung the door open and ran. Left the rig idling on the bridge. He made it 10 feet before the air changed again, and then he heard it. His daughter's voice, "Daddy?" He stopped cold. His little girl had died 6 years ago. Car wreck. Rear-ended by a drunk who didn't stop long enough to see the fire catch. Danny never forgave himself for not being there. He missed the funeral. He was hauling freight up near Texarkana. Miranda never made it to her 6th birthday. He turned. Nothing behind him. Just fog. The hum came. Back. Louder. Angrier. The sound crawled into his ears and laid eggs. His nose bled. His knees buckled. He dropped to the steel grating of the bridge and saw etched into the metal, beneath him, words in rust red. "Tell the truth." The fog coiled around his shoulders like rope. Then everything went black. When Danny woke, it was daylight. The fog gone. The bridge empty. His rig was parked perfectly on the shoulder. Still running. Windows intact. He checked the mirrors. Clean. Checked. The trailer. Locked. Checked his skin. Claw marks. 3 of them. Right across his ribs. Deep and fresh. Like he'd been dragged across broken glass. He drove straight to a diner in Jasper and refused to get back in the truck. Sold it 3 days later. Folks still say Danny walks the bridge some nights. Just walks. Never crosses. Just paces back and forth in the dark, mumbling to himself, arms wrapped around his chest like he's holding something close. Something small, Dot, and if you drive that bridge before dawn and you hear humming from inside your own head, roll up the windows. Don't. Look in the fog. Don't listen to the whispers, Dot, and whatever you do, ... on single quotes, lie to it, Dot, it already knows. You ever hear teeth before they enter a mouth? Not the crunch of a jaw or the tap of nervous gums, just the teeth. Rattling, dancing, whispering to each other like a crowd of children who never learned manners? You'd think it was impossible. You'd be wrong. They started calling him the man with the bag of teeth, but most folks around San Marcos won't even say it out loud anymore. Some call him the tooth man. Others just make a motion 2 fingers walking across a palm, like legs moving down an old Texas road. Either way, you say his name and windows get shut. It started in the summer of '08. Dry, angry heat. No breeze. Even the river felt warm, like bathwater someone else already soaked in. That's when the stories began. A man barefoot walking. Down Ranch Road 12, just past where the town thins out and the woods get dark too early. He don't stick out at first, just another drifter, maybe someone down on his luck. But when he gets close, that's when the wrongness kicks in. No shadow. None. Under the harsh glow of headlights. Not in the flicker of lightning bugs. The ground beneath him stays clean, pure, like he ain't part of this world no more. But it's the sack that does it. A burlap thing. Stained dark at the bottom like it's been dragged through grave dirt and motor oil. He carries it like a holy thing, not slung over his shoulder. Not tied up, no, he offers it. Holds it out with both hands, palms flat underneath, like he's giving you a gift. And some poor souls, God help 'em, they take it. Ray Dillard did. He was a tech for a local HVAC outfit. Good guy, worked long shifts, lived quiet. The kind of man who didn't ask for trouble, but didn't turn his back on people either. Ray was coming back from a call in Wimberley one night midnight, maybe a little after. Road was empty, sky thick with clouds, no moonlight to steer by. Just his high beams and the occasional sign for curves or cattle crossings. That's when he saw him. Just standing on the side of the road like he'd been waiting, barefoot, jeans rolled to the shin, shirt buttoned all the way up, hair greasy and flat against his skull, eyes that didn't reflect light like they should have, eyes that stayed dark. The sack was already held out before Ray even slowed down. He didn't know why he stopped. Later, he'd say he felt a pressure in his chest, like someone pressing a palm against his heart. Not painful, just insistent. He rolled down the window. You all right? The man didn't speak. Just pushed the sack forward a little more. Ray reached out, took it. He said it was light. Way too light, like holding a bag of cotton balls. But then it moved, wriggled, almost, like the weight shifted on its own. He opened it and saw teeth. Big ones, small ones, chipped and perfect. Some were yellowed like old piano keys, others bone white and glistening. They clicked together, not randomly, but in rhythm. A conversation. He threw the bag on the seat beside him. The man was gone. Ray said he never heard footsteps. Not a shuffle. Not a breath. 1 second he was standing there, next he was gone. Ray drove off fast. Didn't look in the mirror. When he got home, he tossed the bag in the trash, left it in the alley behind his duplex. Tried to sleep. That's when the noise started. Soft at first. A little tapping, like something rolling across the hardwood floor. He checked the living room. Nothing. The next night he heard it again. Closer this time. Coming from the kitchen. When he opened the fridge for a beer, 3 teeth were sitting on the shelf, lined up, clean and chattering. He threw them out, but they kept coming. On the windowsill. In the shower. One was wedged inside his shoe, clicking like it was laughing when he stepped on it and screamed. He tore his place apart. Slept in his truck with the doors locked and engine running. Didn't matter. They followed. By the end of the week, Ray was muttering to himself. Neighbors said he stopped coming to work. Lights always on, curtains drawn. Some folks say he nailed his windows shut and painted his walls with toothpaste. Said it kept them out. But one morning he was just gone. Front door wide open. TV frozen. On a blue screen, toothbrushes bent backwards in the sink. They found a single item in the middle of the living room. Rug. The burlap sack. Empty. Except for one tooth. Still clicking, still smiling. No one seen. Ray since, but people still see him. The barefoot man. The one with the bag. They say if you're driven that road near San Marcos, late and alone, you might see him standing real still in the ditch, sack outstretched like an offering. And if you stop, if you reach out and take it, you'll never sleep right again. Because once you hear, once those teeth start talking, they don't ever stop. Just another highway wreck. Nothing more than a jackknifed rig bleeding black onto a 2-lane county road 20 miles south of Corpus Christi, where the scrubland runs dry and the wind smells like salt and sweat. But the folks who were there that morning, they know better. It started with a call at 4:27 a.m. on a Monday. A ranch hand named Elias Guerra was riding the fence line near his family's land when he saw the flash of taillights bright red, half submerged in thick mesquite and sun-bleached grass. He figured it was some drunk who'd taken the curve too fast. Happens every few weeks. But as he got closer, he saw the rig. It wasn't just wrecked. It was folded. The front end was embedded nose first into the dirt like it had been driven straight down from the sky. The trailer looked like it had been twisted by hand steel, warped into impossible curves. The cab door was flung wide open, creaking with every gust. And there was a trail, thick, black, glistening. Not oil. Not quite. Elias said it smelled wrong. Not like fuel. Not like asphalt. More like old pennies and raw meat left too long in the sun. Sharp and heavy. He followed the trail, expecting to find the driver maybe crawling for help. But the trail didn't go downhill like it should. V. It went up. Uphill. Winding. Like a snake. At the top of the rise, he stopped. The black trail ended in a pool, still, shimmering. And then, without a sound, it started to move. Not spread. Not drip. It slithered, climbing the incline, drawn toward him like it had a mind of its own. That's when he ran. The state troopers arrived 25 minutes later. One of them was Lieutenant Rod Grissom, a Corpus local with a stomach like a barrel and a temper to match. He'd seen plenty of roadkill, plenty of blood. But when he stepped out of the squad car and caught a whiff of that smell, he paused. Something in his brain, the old lizard part, told him to turn around. But pride's a funny thing in a uniform. They started combing the site. No sign of the driver. The cab was empty. No blood. No prints. No personal effects. Just that open door and a single scuff on the step like someone had slipped climbing out. But the oddest part was what they found inside the trailer. Nothing. No. Cargo manifest. No destination. The inside was stripped metal except for the walls. Slick. Blackened. Grissom said it looked like the inside of a smoker. Burnt residue coated everything. But the metal wasn't scorched. It was smooth, like it had been polished from the inside by something slick and violent, and it stank. The hazmat team showed up by noon. A young woman named Lainey Wilcox led the inspection. She was bright, sharp-eyed, fast-talking. She took one look at the black fluid still pooled in the gully and decided to collect a sample. Glass vial, metal seal, standard procedure. She was careful. Double-gloved, masked up. Logged it. Tagged it. They never saw her again. That night, the mobile lab surveillance showed her walking back to the trailer just after 1 a.m. She stood there, facing the door, motionless for 12 straight minutes. Then she opened it and stepped inside. She never came out. By the time anyone noticed, the trailer was empty again, except for a new trail. Leading out the back. Uphill. They found the vial the next morning, in her abandoned field kit, still sealed. But inside, the fluid was gone. No leak, no crack. Just missing. But there was something else. Inside the glass, written in streaks along the curve of the inner wall, were words. Letters formed in oily residue. They were uneven, shaky. They read, "I'm still hungry." That's when the Department of Transportation showed up. Real quiet. No badges, no names. They hauled off the wreck with 2 covered trucks and burned. The ground black where the trailer had sat. Every trace of the incident vanished within 48 hours. No news reports. No cleanup signs. Nothing but scorched grass and a patch of melted asphalt where the road used to dip. They even repaved the stretch. Covered it like a scar they didn't want to admit they earned. But truckers still talk, especially the old ones. They say something came out of the refineries. Something from too deep beneath the oil fields. Something that should have stayed buried. Under the salt dome rock and pressure where it was born. It got loose. Got into a tanker, and it liked it. They call it diesel blood now. They say it's not a thing you see. Not unless it wants you to. It rides in the pipes of forgotten rigs, in trailers that show up on manifest but never in loading docks. And if you're driving lonely roads near Corpus, and you catch a smell metallic, hot, wrong, you should keep going. Even if your radio fizzles. Even if your lights flicker. Even if your engine starts to cough like it's choking on its own. Breath. Do not stop. Because that trail might be crawling uphill, and you don't want to know what's at the end of it. They still talk about it in low voices at the back corner of the Pilot Travel Center off I-35. Somewhere, between the smell of burned coffee and diesel-soaked jeans, the story slithers from one set of lips to another, passed between drivers like a cancer diagnosis. Not all of them believe it, but all of them know it. Know it the way you know the heat on your neck when someone's watching. They call it a way station, but it's not listed on any maps. Doesn't show up on satellite. You can scan the whole stretch between the border crossing near Hidalgo and the dark turns of Falcon Lake, and you won't see anything but dirt, mesquite, and the wind rolling through scrubland like it's looking for something to punish. But if you're hauling at night, especially after midnight, and if you've got something in your load that ain't logged or ain't legal or sure as hell ain't holy, it shows up. They say it moves, shifts, like it only appears to the ones it's meant to. You might be clean 100 nights and never see it. Or you might lie once, just once, and find yourself rolling into it before you realize your headlights have dimmed and your FM's gone to static. That's when the way station shows up. Just pops into existence like it's always been there. That's what happened to Calvin Rios. Cal had been running loads through South Texas for 12 years. Kept to himself, paid his bills, didn't ask questions. That's what made him perfect for the side job. 10 extra grand cash, no questions. Just haul a reefer trailer across the border and drop it in a gravel lot behind a shuttered fireworks stand. He didn't want to know what was inside, and the client didn't want to tell him. He took the job, took the money, took the back road. Near Rio Grande City, where the checkpoints were light and the cameras barely worked. It was 12:42 a.m. when his headlights flickered. Not out weird. Like something had passed in front of them, but there wasn't anything there. No wind, no deer, no fog. Just a flicker, and then a glow up ahead, orange and still and too warm. A way station. Old school, brick booth. One lane, no signage. Lit like a photograph from the 1970s. Like the air itself was stained. The gate was down. Cal didn't want to stop. Every part of his body screamed no, but he couldn't stop himself. The wheel turned on its own. The brakes worked, but it felt like pushing against something thick like molasses or mud. He rolled to a stop. The booth window slid open, and the man stepped out. He wore a suit so black it ate the light around it. No hat, no badge. Thin build, too tall. No clipboard, not yet. Just stood there, hands behind his back, pale skin like polished marble, and eyes that didn't seem to blink. Cal reached for his license. "Evenin', officer. Didn't know y'all had a station out here." The man didn't smile. Not yet. He leaned down, close enough for Cal to smell something ozone and sulfur, like struck matches after a thunderstorm. "Have you been clean tonight, Mr. Rios?" He knew his name. Cal hesitated. "Yes, sir, clean." That's when the man smiled. It was the kind of smile that didn't involve muscles. Just happened. A rip in the face, stretching past what should have been bone, full of teeth that were too many and too narrow, like the spines on a fish. "You may proceed," he said. Then reached down and placed a single finger on the hood of Cal's truck. Tapped it once. Like a seal. The gate lifted. Cal drove. Drove like the devil himself was nipping at his wheels. His hands shook. His skin itched. He didn't look back. At the next bend a hard turn near. Zapata, the brakes failed. He hit the pedal. Nothing. Pumped it. Nothing. His trailer groaned. Tires locked. The rig began to jackknife, and the metal screamed like it knew what was coming. He managed to steer it into a ditch, barely missing a concrete barrier and flipping onto its side. When the wreckers came, they found the cab mangled, the engine cold, the driver's seat empty. But no sign of Cal. Just a burn mark on the hood, where the man had touched it, black like an iron brand. The reefer trailer had swung wide and burst open. It was empty. No drugs, no stolen goods, no cash. Just a single item lying in the middle of the aluminum floor, a Bible, soaked through with what the EMT said looked like blood, but dried black. Since then, others have seen the station. A woman, out of Laredo hauling for a cartel, disappeared after saying she saw a man with no shadow check her manifests. A kid from Brownsville, hauling scrap, swore he heard someone breathing through his CB and whispering, "Are you clean?" before his radio burst into flames. They pulled him out of his cab with second-degree burns on his mouth and palms. The weigh station don't check your weight. It checks you. The man don't ask for ID. He already knows your name. He don't ask for papers. He asks if your soul's been scrubbed. And if you lie, he smiles. And then you lose something, your brakes, your mind. Your way back. No one's sure what happens if you tell the truth. Maybe you pass through. Maybe you get a second chance. But most folks never get the option because liars lie by habit. And that thing in the booth? He's not checking for cargo. He's counting the lies you've buried behind your teeth.